ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? What? I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound of it.
Into Box Office Quarterbacks, a daytime edition of Box Office Quarterbacks for a while. The lighting is great in both me and Ahmed's houses. But I am doing fantastic. My team just won the NBA Finals. I know a lot of our viewers don't care about that, but I just had to say it off the top. Ahmed, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. I'm happy to get to talk to you about this movie. Even though I'm not a DC fan, I'm always happy to talk about movies with you guys.
All right. Well, you want to get nuts, Ahmed? Let's get
Let's get
nuts.
nuts.
Let's get nuts. We are doing a rewatch of Batman 1989, starring Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, Kim Basinger, Robert Wall, and a whole bunch of other people. We wanted to do a rewatch of this because The Flash is coming out in a few days as we're recording this, and we just kind of wanted to reintroduce ourselves to Michael Keaton as Batman. So I've seen this movie a lot. Is the first Batman movie I saw as a kid. I rented it all the time from Blockbuster. Ahmed, tell me about your reactions watching this movie.
So I remember seeing it as a kid. It was, VHS tape that we had in the house for some reason. And, you know, I just remember like, I was just a kid and I was kind of scared by it. And then watching it again now as an adult, knowing what I know about movies and art, this is such a timeless classic. Um, and so watching it again is like, wow, there's just so much to unpack here. This movie was beyond its time, if you will. And now it's no wonder it's considered one of the best movies. But um, you know, just it's just like again, I'm not a DC fan, but this is one of those movies that you don't have to be a DC fan or even a Batman fan to appreciate it.
Yeah, and even if you're a Tim Burton fan, I think there's enough for you to really appreciate here because his style is just so unique that it'll pull you in, even if you're not into superheroes and everything. This was the first time that Batman had been on screen since the '60s, and it's the first time that we got kind of a non-campy version of Batman. So you had this kind of based off of like the run of Frank Miller comics in the '80s and all the other gritty portrayals that kind of came in the comic world. And Michael Keaton as Batman, when he was cast, was initially not well received. The fans were like very, very weary of a comedian playing a very serious character. But he is still my favorite Batman. Watching this, years later, he's just so good.
You're not alone in that. There's a lot of people that like when you think of who is Batman to you, a lot of people will say Michael Keaton, Christian Bale. I mean, yeah. And both of those actors, of course, deserve their flowers, but Michael Keaton just brought something more unique to it. He even, cited his, ability as a comedic actor to kind of navigate through this character. Michael Keaton is also just one of those guys that like you can separate Michael Keaton from from the character, but you forget sometimes who Michael Keaton is because he just becomes that character so well that you're like, oh no, that's not Michael Keaton. That's Batman. That's Gene from the other guys. I'm sorry, Captain Gene from the other
Yeah.
guys. That's Beetlejuice, bro. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those roles that like Michael Keaton is just like you can't take that away from him. Of course, the controversy in and of itself before then, and even Jack Nicholson wasn't even the first cast as the Joker, and now we know both of those guys as the original, the duel of the freaks, if you will.
Yeah, and Jack is so great as the Joker, even though he plays himself pretty much. He's just kind of doing Jack Nicholson from The Shining, but like more crazy. And some of his lines are so hilarious, where it's like, "This town needs an enema," and then he just says a whole bunch of other random ass shit. I love the scene in the museum when he's defacing all the paintings and saying Joker was here, and just kind of a batshit crazy portrayal. And that's really what I wanted in the Joker. And he even pulled out like classic kind of Joker uh, pranks and stuff at the end of the movie when he's like putting on the glasses. He's like, hey, you wouldn't hit a guy with glasses, would you? And a whole bunch of other stuff.
The running mouth after he gets hit
Yeah,
in the face. But
I loved it.
it's funny you bring that scene up where he is defacing all this priceless art. Jack Nicholson, who in IMDb, IMDb sponsor us. That he is actually a lover of art, and he was totally like, this is one of his favorite roles that he's played. Jack Nicholson apparently watched this movie once a week because he was so proud of the work he did,
No,
and yet that's the scene defacing the art that made him feel uneasy, because he's just like, I can't do that, this is priceless art. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So to see something that makes Jack Nicholson uncomfortable, I'm kind of with it.
yeah, and that scene is just so like crazy, and it's really the first meeting between Batman and the Joker as well. That's maybe one of the dings I had in it. They don't really get much time on screen together, but
Mhm.
when they do, it's like dynamite when it does happen. But I guess let's talk about some of the other characters in this movie. You have Vicky Vale, played by Kim Basinger. I thought she was fine. I just thought she got real attached to Bruce Wayne like really quickly, and she like told him he loved him within a span of like weeks is what this movie took place in. So I was like, all right, we can calm down there. And then
Yeah.
yeah, and Robert Wool as Alexander Knox was obsessed with Vicky Vale, so I'm like, you need to calm down too, my man.
Well, and what's funny is like, totally get where you're coming from, but at the same time, I thought in terms of playing the damsel in distress, Kim Basinger has pipes when it comes to the screaming.
Yeah,
Like she was perfect to play that part. But you're totally right. Even the ending, where she's like trying to seduce the Joker as a means of distracting him. It's like, wow, okay, it took this long for you to fall in love with me.
yeah. And when you're on top of a church and then he's threatening you with a gun and everything like that. There was also the scene where, the thugs knock out Batman and they're about to take his mask off. And she tries to take a picture with the flash on. And I was like, what are you doing? You
Of
like, if
course.
you're a professional photographer, wouldn't you turn the flash off to not arise suspicion?
I
So
mean, you've only been published in Time magazine, right? So, yeah, man, there was just so much, and I mean, you can kind of forgive some of those things, um, but like again, it's still timeless for when it was made.
yeah,
Even the little cheesy like intro scene where he's beating up the thugs, and then he just gives the iconic "I'm Batman," which I will say was improvised. Actually,
really.
it was improvised.
Damn.
It was a callback to like the I'm the Vengeance or whatever, but like then every other subsequent Batman series would start to do it with I'm the Vengeance, I'm the Knight, and whatnot. But what's funny? You were talking about Kim Basinger, Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Keaton were dating at the time, and she wanted the role of Vicky
Oh
Vale,
man, that is
but
crazy.
Michael Keaton said no to it because he thought it would be awkward.
Well, yeah, that must have been really awkward at that point then. Their chemistry is great in that second movie, though, that's for sure. She was the better of the love interests, in my opinion. But just some of the other stuff I loved about this movie, I thought the set pieces were fantastic. I loved the creation of the Joker and when he falls into the vat of chemicals, and Jack has some great lines in there as well, where he's like, "Hey, Eckhart, why don't you think about the future?" And then he shoots him. Then you have when he introduces himself as the Joker to Jack Palance's character, and then the ending with all the balloons, where Batman comes in his Batwing, swoops in, cuts all the poison balloons, and takes them up into the sky. And then the church scene is still my favorite. And when I was little, I had a Joker and Batman, action figures, and I would like drop the Joker off my second story balcony as like recreating the ending. So I loved all of those as well.
So it's funny, like in terms of my favorite scene, or at least the most memorable scenes for me, was when Jack Nicholson kind of just says he's looking at the newspaper and he says, "This guy terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me." And then it's kind of easy to see the whole, like you said, the set pieces. It's really amazing to see how the film sets the tone that this city is easily susceptible to falling under a spell of corruption, greed. And we see that in the balloon scene, which is one of the most memorable scenes I remember. I vividly recall as a child, where there's just being money thrown at them. And they're just like, "We love you, Joker." Like, that's all it took. Just
Yeah.
free me. And I mean, of course, being a 30-year-old almost, it's like, yeah, I get it. Someone gave me free money and I hated their guts. Like, I don't like you, but I could sure use the money.
Yeah. So, like the Joker actually was very scary in how he kind of manipulated people in this movie. And then there's that whole scene where he cuts into a lot of news feeds in this movie. Like it's very easy to take over a broadcast signal in Gotham, but the scene where the news anchor kind of loses her mind to the Joker poison, I thought that was scary. And then like the next scene, you see the anchors not wearing any makeup or anything like that because the Joker had poisoned all the beauty products in Gotham. So that was very scary. Just Jack's one-liners I loved. Pretty much almost every portrayal of the big main characters in this movie I loved. And I guess that could get us to main characters, Ahmed. Who are your favorites from this movie?
See, it's tough to say which one is more than the other, because Michael Keaton obviously brings, the brooding force to both Bruce Wayne and Batman, whereas Jack Nicholson just brings so much of the Joker to life. There was one scene, and we're probably giving away the entire movie, but that
Oh, it's
intro
been out
scene,
for 30 years, 34
yeah,
years, so we're good.
but
Yeah.
but that scene where before the makeup happens and he like before he has the white makeup, this is after he kills his old boss and he meets with the other thugs, and they're like, "Well, what if we don't want to partner with you?" And he says, "Well, nobody wants a war, so let's just shake hands." And he electrocutes him to death.
Yeah.
It's like when you're young and it's the late 80s and you just see a figure that's a skeleton being talked to. It's very it makes you feel uneasy. Now we've seen way worse in our time, but so looking back at that scene is pretty tame, I suppose. But in the 80s, that was like, I can only imagine the protests and letters they got. But it's such a powerful introduction to how ruthlessly psychotic the Joker really is.
So that one was scary. I also loved the scene in the apartment. Vicky Vale also has the nicest apartment for any journalist on the face of the earth. I was like,
Yeah,
you
what the
can't
hell?
afford that. What is this?
I think this was during a time before when like not everybody that had a website could be a journalist.
Yeah. I was like, oh, she can afford a penthouse downtown on a journalist salary. Interesting.
You know what it is? This is also during the time of Woodward and Bernstein when they exposed Nixon. So
Oh,
journalists were suave and cool at the time,
we were the belles of the ball back then, Ahmed. We got in it at the wrong time. But just, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. And have
Oh,
you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight? I was like, the dialogue in that scene is my favorite. Like, and that'll be my two favorite characters because I can't pick them. The Joker and Batman. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
Like they could be interchanged. I love them both. I think this is the first time in the show where I'm going to do a tie for favorite character.
I have to agree with you. It would be sacrilege to mm, pin them, like put one before the other and vice versa. It would be too much. Because again, both of these roles were so iconic that every subsequent role afterwards, people are trying to outdo them, if you will, or just try to show some homage. And the only person that came close, and Jeff, feel free to disagree with me, but in terms of the Joker, there were maybe only two people that were able to do that. One was Heath Ledger, obviously, and the other was Mark Hamill when he did the voice
Yes.
of in the animated series.
I do agree. I am not a fan of the Joaquin Phoenix Joker. I think the movie is very overrated, but Heath is still the best Joker. Like he is, and I love Jack. Like don't get me wrong, but Heath just brought something more sinister to that role, and it's always going to be the ultimate portrayal. And Mark Hamill is fantastic as well, and like the iconic voice of the Joker. So we've had some good ones in there. We've had some really bad ones like Jared Leto and his uh like fake gangster Joker with all the tattoos all over him. That was so stupid, but
Jared Leto, it seemed promising, but it ended up just not working out. But I will credit him that like he tried his best. And the same thing with Joaquin Phoenix. My problem with the Joaquin Phoenix, and Jeff, I'm so glad you said it because I felt so bad thinking, am I the only one that doesn't really care for this? But Joaquin Phoenix is always going to be Joaquin Phoenix. You cannot like he puts a lot of effort into his characters, but I don't see him as the Joker. I just see him as a guy who's playing somebody in a clown suit with a lot of
yeah.
severe depression, and like that idea is great, but I think it could have been executed by someone better. I honestly thought that Joseph Gordon-Levitt could have played a better Joker in terms of an origin story because he was young. I mean, he's still pretty young, so maybe there's still time. But and Joseph Gordon-Levitt seems like the kind of guy that you would feel sorry for, like if he was just down on his luck.
Yeah, and Cameron Monaghan, who did play the Joker on Gotham, I think he could still be a good Joker because like his portrayal in that horrible TV show was the best thing about that. But what the problem with Joaquin Phoenix's Joker and that movie specifically is they straight up ripped off Taxi Driver the movie, like almost beat for beat. It's
Yeah,
but like that was my big problem with it. I'm like, you're just doing Travis Bickle, and it's not new to me.
it's Taxi Driver and another Robert De Niro film, The King of New York or The Kings of New York, something like that, where Robert De Niro plays a troubled comedian, and
Yeah.
it was even crazier to see Robert De Niro playing a comedian. It just seemed so forced. Like we were really expecting to like it, and we were just kind of like, oh, it's Joaquin Phoenix, and everything Joaquin does turns to gold, which it is. But in this one, I wasn't feeling it.
Yeah. But yeah, the history of the Joker is probably like a whole other episode we could do, and even the history of Batman. But we are getting Michael Keaton back as Batman later this week, which I'm very excited about. That was like one of the highlights of the past few years when I heard he was coming back. So we'll see.
I think that's the only. I'm calling it now. The movie's gonna suck, and Michael Keaton will be the only thing good about this movie, but it'll also be the movie's downfall because DC, as a film company, has run into this problem where they just try to keep introducing new characters because they think that's what the people want. There are too many cooks in the kitchen, and none of it flows properly.
It is being rebooted after this, but I do think
Oh,
that,
see again?
well, yes, not a, well, that's why I'm here to fill in the blanks. But I think that it this movie has been hyped up a lot. Like I've never seen a movie so gassed up like this movie, where it's like Tom Cruise called the director personally to thank him, and I was like, okay. I'm like, did they do that for Across the Spider Verse? Because that is like, I doubt it's better than that movie. I would bet money that it isn't, but we'll see. Our
Yeah.
review's coming out. And by the time you watch this episode, it probably will already be out, and you could just go to the next episode and see if we're eating crow or not.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'm I don't know. You know my stance towards DC, and obviously I'm not, too happy with the things that Ezra Miller has done. They know what they did, but it's I'm still gonna watch it because I am a film reviewer and objective reviewer as well. But it's I'm gonna have to block that part of me as I watch this movie and just kind of try to remember the vision behind it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people liked the Flash. There's so many, like, the series, everyone loved the series, they've loved his character, but I am curious to see what goes on. But again, all these different surprises that were in the trailer. You've got Superwoman in there, you've got Zod, and you've got Michael Keaton's Batman and Ben Affleck's Batman. i
Yeah.
just i just don't see how the movie's expected to make sense, because
Well,
go ahead.
oh no, you go ahead. I was just gonna say the directors or the producers of Spider-Verse said that you can't just throw cameos into a movie and expect it to be good. You actually have to have a good story. So
Right.
that's gonna be kind of my mindset going into that movie.
Right, because you would have thought they would have learned their lesson when they made Batman versus Superman, which, all the hype around it, was was expected. Batman versus effing Superman, only to find out that, wait, they both have the same, their moms had the
Oh
same
my
name.
god.
Like, it was the stupidest thing I'd ever seen. And then, of course, Jesse Eisenberg
He is the
as
worst.
is the
Worst
worst
villain.
Lex Luthor. And then, of course, they have to introduce Doomsday. They introduce Wonder Woman. There's a cameo of the Flash. Like, it all just starts to just kind of
Yeah.
make you wonder what the heck is going on. But of course, it's all supposed to lead up to certain things. But it's like, you can't just force people to go, oh, watch the next movie. You have to introduce it.
Yeah. So, this might be the end of that world of DC, but I am interested to see how they wrap it up. Like, I am definitely interested. Michael Keaton is like the biggest selling point for me. As far as this movie goes, to kind of wrap things up, your ranking for it, Ahmed.
Hall of Fame, bro. Or so we made a new one when we talked about the about Spider Verse, the goat. This
I would have to agree for what it represents for the superhero genre. I think it was kind of the blueprint for like more serious superhero movies kind of moving forward. You had Batman Returns after this. Uh, Batman Begins kind of got back to this type of tone after Batman and Robin and Batman Forever. But this movie's fantastic. It still holds up. Highly recommend it. And highly recommend a rewatch before you go watch The Flash as well.
No doubt. Even Scratchy agrees. She came to let us know
Yes.
herself.
10 out of 10, she
10 out of
recommends.
10. Yep.
All right. Well,
10
that
out of
has 10
10.
out of 10 claws or paws or whatever you want to say. She actually likes Batman Returns better for the Catwoman aspect. But yeah, this has been another edition of Box Office Quarterbacks. I'm Jeff. That's my friend Ahmed. We will see you guys on the next episode for our review of The Flash. See you then.
See you then.